like to introduce myself here to everybody that's come in. My name is Mike Padilla. I'm a project manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Chicago, and I am the project manager for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, of which we'll be telling you about today. And I'd like to welcome you here. We're co-hosting this with Ohio, and they welcome you as well, and they will say a few words of welcome in a few minutes. But to get started, I wanted to mention a few things about today. We are talking about the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, and in particular, this is a public shared vision meeting. And you may be familiar with, shared vision or vision statements, that sort of thing. And what it comes down to is that whenever a group of people have kind of a common objective, it's very beneficial for that group of people to come to a consensus on what their vision is for the work that they're doing. And so the work that we're doing is to try to make the Great Lakes coast more resilient in the face of changing climate and the future. And we want to try to come to a consensus with everybody about what our vision is for that. And we'll talk a lot more about that, and we'll get your involvement here in a few minutes. I would like to mention that for the folks who are not able to listen in today, that the meeting will be recorded, or it is being recorded, and it can be found at the study's website. And we'll be able to tell you more about the website. There's a URL code to click on for that, but in general, or people that are just on the phone, it's www.lrd.usace, that's usace.army.mil, /GLCRS, Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. And again, there will be plenty of opportunity to see that again and to click on that code. This is going to be the first of many outreach and partnering opportunities that will occur over the next few years as the study takes shape and moves towards a collaborative conclusion. We really appreciate you being here, and we hope that you will be informed by today, and will be able to be involved as we go forward in those many opportunities that we'll discuss. Enhancing resiliency along our coast is a shared responsibility, and it requires that we all work together to respond to changing future conditions. Climate change is something that's on a lot of people's mind, but one thing we can do is we can plan for it and be proactive. One thing I wanted to mention is that we're going to be responding to questions at a designated question and answer time rather than take questions as we go through it. I think we find it's better to just do the presentation and then leave plenty of time for question and answer. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And right now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Akila Martin, sorry about that. And she will explain some of the Zoom features here and some things about the Q&A and the chat features. Akila?
Yeah, thank you. I love being a mountain. Thank you so much, Mike. Welcome, everyone, to the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study shared public meeting and co-hosted with the state of Ohio. I am Dr. Akila Martin. I'm daughter to Laurel and James Martin. I am the facilitator for these public meetings, and I have a co-facilitator who you've probably already seen, Madeline Dewey, who will be engaging with you in the chat. So I wanted to go over the platform that we're using today, which is Zoom. And I also want to take time out to thank the Argonne National Laboratory for providing this tool for us to use for these shared public meetings. So thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you so much, Laura and Argonne. We really appreciate this. So if you would turn your eyes down to the bottom of your screen, if you are in the Zoom video platform, I know that we have a few people on the phone. If you look to see where there is a Q&A and it has two call out figures at the top of that, that's where we would encourage you, invite you to ask questions. You can send a question privately, you can send it anonymously. However you feel that you want to send your question, please send it there. Now, if you have comments and or input or feedback of what's happening today or in general regarding the Great Lakes, please use the chat feature. And that button is to the right of the Q&A. It says chat. You can click on that. You can send me, Akila, a direct message, Madeline Dewey, a direct message if you want to chat something privately, and or if you want us to state it out loud during a Q&A response without using your name, you can do that as well. And then if you'd like to see the closed captions, that button is to the right of the chat button. So you can click on that and you can see what we're saying in text form. And if you can view the full transcript as you can see on the screen. If you have any questions, please put in the Q&A. If you have any comments or input or feedback for us, please place those in the chat. Yes. Yeah, you can send me a direct message if you'd like to keep your name private and anonymous. So that's fine. You can definitely direct message me, Akila and or Madeline. All right. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to you, Mike, and welcome everyone.
Thanks, Akila. And as you see in the chat, we do have the website link there, and I'm looking forward to seeing questions and chat comments from you as well. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the agenda for today. And basically, the purpose of this briefing is to provide you all with a background and context for the study and initiate our collaborative outreach program by bringing you as stakeholders to the table with our study team as we move forward with the study. Today, we are here with the state of Ohio, who is cost sharing the study with us, along with the other 7 Great Lakes states. And cost sharing is very important because everybody's got skin in the game when it comes to this study. We'll be introducing you to some of the key members of our project delivery team as we walk through and talk a little bit about some of the technical scope of the study. And then, after the briefing, we really look forward to your questions and answers. But bottom line, we're going to start with icebreaker exercises about the Great Lakes. Should be interesting for you. Then the state of Ohio folks here today are going to do some opening remarks and do a presentation about their coastal Great Lakes mission and their programs and things like that. Then the Corps of Engineers will do some presentation of the study. What's the study all about? The background and the scope of the study. We'll talk about the shared vision statement, which is really the main reason we're here today. And we'll talk to you about, our major study products that we will produce from the study, and talk a little bit about the basin-wide analysis. And then again, plenty of time for questions and answers, and then we'll be closing out the program at that point. I think if anything that there's plenty of time for questions and answers, so I feel free to jot some down or put them in the Q&A module there, and we'll definitely get to them. Back to Akila here. She's going to talk a little bit about the meeting touchstones and shared expectations. Akila.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Welcome again, everyone. I'm Akila. I wanted to talk about how we'd like to share space with you today for the next hour or so. So we call these the meeting touchstones as well as shared expectations because these go for all of us that are in this platform, whether you're on the phone or the video platform. And so I'll go over those one by one and definitely ask questions if necessary and or chat comments to me directly if you have comments. So first of all, we'd love for you to be 100% present, prepared, extending, and presuming welcome. We welcome all comments. We welcome all questions. Of course, all meaning appropriate to the Great Lakes, and we welcome that. We encourage you and invite you to send us questions. If you can, to limit distractions, mute and turn off cell phones, any dings or notifications on your phone and or laptop or computer or desktop. We love for you to be aware of and allow for the difference between intention and impact. Listen deeply, always by invitation. As you've heard us say at least 10 times already, we'd love to hear your questions. We'd love to hear your feedback and input. So please feel free to do that. At any time, identify any assumptions and suspend judgment. If you are able to come off mute and speak, please limit your time to 1.5 minutes so that we can ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and or get their questions answered. And when you are speaking, whether that's verbal or in written form, please speak your truth. When things get difficult, turn to wonder, knowing that you are making a significant contribution. And then we want to emphasize to expect non-closure. And that just means that we may not get to answer all of your questions or acknowledge all of your comments if we get lots and lots and lots of questions. However, the team will work very diligently to get the answers to you in the coming months. Lastly, keep us moving forward and focused on the meeting purpose. We are so excited to share space with you today, and we welcome you yet again. Thank you. All right. So, just to reemphasize what we said multiple times already, if you look down at your screen, the bottom of your screen in the Zoom platform, I know those are there are people on the phone, no worries. We'll get to you in a second. You can use the Q&A function to ask questions. You can do that privately where we won't be able to share your name, and or you can send me, Akila, or Madeline a direct message in the chat to send us a message if you'd like to remain private. If you have any comments, any input or feedback, please use the chat. All right. I thank you so much. Welcome. Mike, back to you. Mike, I believe you're on mute. I know you had great words to say, so.
Sorry about that. Trying to manage that mute button here. There's a lot of things going on around in the office. So yeah, thanks, Akila. So I wanted to talk a little bit about resiliency, what that means to you. But first, let me tell you what it means to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And as you can imagine, the Corps of Engineers has many missions and objectives on the Great Lakes states because our mission is generally for civil works is water resources. And we've thought a lot about resilience because of our facilities and locks and dams and things like that. We define resilience as the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions and withstand, respond to, and recover rapidly from disruptions. And resiliency is a trait that results from adaptation and preparedness and being ready, planning really. It describes a holistic approach to identifying threats, vulnerabilities, and opportunities in a way to prioritize things that may be vulnerable. Uh, we recognize resilience as a fundamental characteristics of systems and operations. We kind of use this diagram here that you see on the slide, prepare, absorb, recover, and adapt. So prepare, it's just, what can you do to get ready for so that before, during, and immediately after a disruption, you're ready. It involves planning, training, putting up protection and things like that. Absorb, when an event happens, you want to be able to endure that disruption with minimal damage, without losing normal functionality. Recover, once something's occurred, you want to be able to get quickly back to functionality. And it could be that you need to rebuild some things as part of the recovery. And then adapt really means from all those things to understand lessons learned and things like that, and adapt and make changes so that you can reduce negative impacts in the future. So again, the Corps of Engineers has really thought a lot about resiliency, but we'd like to get your input on what resiliency means to you. And so we're going to do this exercise, kind of an icebreaker here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Akila, and she'll direct you how to go about this. Akila.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Hey, everyone. We'd love for you to respond to the question, what does coastal resiliency mean to you? Madeline has already placed the link in the chat. I'll also read it out loud for those on the phone. So the link is POLLEV. So the platform is Poll Everywhere. So you would want to put POLLEV, so POLLEV.com, and then a / Choice Guru 975. And I'll spell that out. That's CHOICEGURU 975. And that is polev.com / Choice Guru 975. Now, for those of you who would like to use your phone rather than your laptop or tablets, you can text your response to this number, 22333. I'll say the number again, 22333. Once you have the number, you text Choice Guru 975, the same thing I just said for the website, and then text your response. And that could be a word, statement, sentences, phrases, however you feel. And also, we have a third way. We have a QR code on the screen for those that are in the web platform. You can use your cameras from your phone to scan that QR code, and it should take you right to the Poll Everywhere site. What we set up at the Poll Everywhere site is a word cloud, and I will share my screen now so that we can see the word cloud come alive. Kara, is that showing? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So okay, thank you, Kara. If you have not heard of a word cloud just basically shows the attendees' responses. And the more frequent the word appears in the responses, the larger it appears in the word cloud. So as you can see, ability, adapt, coastal, community, means, protection, those words are enlarged, and that means that that word is being used more frequently. I'll leave this up for the duration of the meeting, so please feel free to add as many responses as you feel appropriate. We really appreciate you being patient with us and engaging with us and participating in this activity. Thank you so much. Keep going. I love to see the word cloud change like this. It's beautiful. Thank you for your responses, and I will turn it back over to Mike to continue on with coastal resiliency. Thank you all.
Thanks, Akila. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So one way to get at this as well, and I think we're talking here about what does coastal resiliency mean to this study? And so we got with the 8 Great Lakes states who are our partners. Ohio's here represented today. We got with them when we talked a lot about this as we started to begin the study. And one way to look at it is to kind of do a who, what, when, where exercise here. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So resiliency, the who, it's really the people that live by the Great Lakes. It also includes the infrastructure, any of the resources, the communities, the habitats, the recreation, all the different resources that are on the Great Lakes coast. And what? Well, we're worried about the things that could cause disruptions or events that are could be negative or impactful to those to the who here, and that could be variable water levels and ice conditions under a range of possible climate change scenarios. A lot of this that we're talking about is, you know, the climate change, planning for climate change, and we recently experienced both low water levels around 2014 and high water levels in 2020. So it happens a lot. There's a lot of things that happen. We want to make sure we understand what happens with those water levels and ice conditions and things of that nature. When we want to talk about resiliency now, but also the longer term, you know, we need when we build something, we expect it to last. We want to make sure that we're looking at things that could occur and be resilient in the long term. The where part of it's pretty straightforward. It's the United States Great Lakes coast. And when I say the United States, we all know that Canada, you know, borders the Great Lakes as well. And I just wanted to mention to folks that when it comes to the modeling for, and we'll talk more about this, but some of the modeling that we're doing that's looking into variable water levels and ice conditions and wave and surge and you know, changes in potential changes in temperature due to global warming, we're going to be coordinating that with the Canadians. But as you can imagine, to come up with plans and things like that is really, you know, it's to the United States side of the coast, that because, you know, we're the United States government doing this study, and so we won't be studying the Canadian side, but we will be coordinating with them some of the results from our modeling. And then I think the biggest thing that we're looking for help with is why. You know, why are we being resilient? What's out there? You know, what's the economic, environmental, and social value of the Great Lakes? All the different resources. You know, why do we need to be resilient? You know, what could happen out there? And then when it comes to the how, as we go through this study, we'll start to generate some recommendations and things like that. And we want to be able to study this, and then from that promote a shared responsibility for what could occur. Maybe identify a range of actions that can be done to make everything more resilient, and then have that knowledge guide investment for the future to make sure that whatever we build can be resilient for whatever comes our way. So just wanted to kind of use that who, what, when, where, why, and how, so you can kind of understand what we're trying to do here. Next slide, please. Akila?
Yes, thanks so much, Mike, for that overview of resiliency. So now I'd like to welcome the team from the state of Ohio, Steve Holland, Debbie Beck, Amanda Kovac, and Brian George, and Scudder Mackey. And Scudder Mackey will be providing the state's opening remarks as well as the state's presentation. And just for your information, Scudder is the Deputy Director in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Scudder serves as the Chief of the Office of Coastal Management and is also the Program Manager of the Ohio Coastal Management Program. That's quite a few titles, Scudder. We're excited to hear your remarks and your presentation. We welcome you to the stage as the rest of your team. Thank you all for hosting this meeting. Thank you. Welcome.
Yep. Well, thank you, Akila. Definitely appreciate all the effort that's gone into planning this stakeholder engagement meeting. It's one of many, I think, that will be coming down the pike here. I know that our constituents and the communities along our coast are very interested in the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. And I just want to welcome everyone. I know everybody's busy. There's a lot going on. And I just really do appreciate taking your time. I did a quick scan and I recognize a lot of the names on the list here. So we've got a pretty good attendance today, and that's very much appreciated. I will tell you, though, that I'm not sure if this is going to be as exciting as the eclipse that occurred on Monday. So but it might be. I know Akila is pretty excited about this stakeholder meeting. So anyways, a couple of things. I would very much encourage you to listen to what we have to say. I'll be providing a brief update on obviously what the Office of Coastal Management does and what our interest is in the study. And the Corps of Engineers, the project team, is going to give you a fairly detailed breakdown and description of the study and how it's going to move forward. And I just want to encourage you, if you have any questions at all, put your questions in the Q&A area here on the Zoom meeting, and feel free to contact our office directly subsequent to the meeting if you have any questions. And we are definitely looking forward to engaging with our coastal communities and our coastal constituents as the study moves forward to make sure that the study meets the needs of the state of Ohio. So I think that's pretty much my opening remarks, and I believe I move into my presentation. Okay. I only have about 4 slides plus a transition slide, so this is going to go pretty quick. First of all, why does the state of Ohio have an interest in the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study? Well, I have to tell you that we were involved in a meeting, a coastal states organization meeting in Milwaukee in 2016, and that's when the concept for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study first surfaced. And I was involved in those initial discussions and felt very strongly that a broad-scale, basin-wide study of the Great Lakes focused on resiliency would help all of the Great Lakes states, but especially important if the states could engage and work in a partnership with the Corps of Engineers. And thus we moved toward with this watershed sort of design where it's a 75-25% cost share. And as Mike mentioned in his opening remarks, the states have skin in the game. So this is really important to the Great Lakes states, not just the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And it is a true partnership, which I think is going to help us in the long term. So with respect to the Great Lakes Coastal Study, what is Ohio's interest? Well, really, it's to protect the long-term economic, environmental, and social value of the Great Lakes coast through proactive planning. And what we're looking at here is, can we do a basin-wide assessment? Can we do more detailed assessments? can we anticipate what's coming down the pike here as a result of changing weather patterns and climate? And can we help our local communities plan for those changes? There are three major components that we're very interested in. One is the vulnerability assessments. Now, those of you know that we do our coastal erosion area mapping program here in Ohio. We do a comprehensive mapping of erosion over different time periods. We do this at least once every 10 years. It's legislatively mandated. We share that information with all of our coastal constituents. We have a 312-mile shoreline, and that helps us assess areas of higher risk. But a vulnerability assessment, as will be done in this study, is going to be much broader scope and will incorporate other elements more so than just the erosion that we typically measure along our coastline. We're also interested in coastal resiliency, specifically, what does that mean? But also, what are the types of solutions that the study may be able to offer our coastal constituents and our coastal communities? And then finally, one of the things that would be developed out of the study, it may be a tool, it may be another different type of interaction, but it's a risk-informed decision framework where it basically allows local communities and also counties and state government to actually look at the information that we have and make effective and correct management decisions as to how we manage our coast in the future. And as was indicated before, we are partners with the 8 Great Lakes states. We also work very closely with the Corps of Engineers, who is leading the study, and NOAA is a very strong partner with us as well. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the Office for Coastal Management. Many of you are on the call already know much about what we do, but the Coastal Management Program here in Ohio is basically the result of the Coastal Zone Management Act that was passed in 1972, the same year that we passed the Clean Water Act. And it basically allowed the states to create coastal management programs if they met a set of federal criteria and they received federal approval. And then actually they are funded 50-50 by the federal government and by the local state. So 50% of our income that we use to actually implement our program is derived from the federal government through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. So what is it that we do? Well, we are basically focused on protecting, managing, and enhancing the coastal resources for the benefit of the people of the state of Ohio. That's our primary mission. We do this in a number of different ways. We provide technical assistance and guidance to our coastal property owners and to municipalities. We have coastal engineers on staff. Debbie Beck, who's on the call here, is my assistant chief. She is also a coastal engineer and also manages our regulatory program. We are implementing predictable and responsive regulatory programs. There are several different types of authorizations that we use to manage the coast. Shore structure permits are permits that are authorized for certain types of shore protections, specifically to protect against erosion and flooding. We also more recently developed a temporary shore structure permitting program, which was designed to address catastrophic erosion during the periods of extraordinarily high water we had in 2019 and 2020. It allows people to put in temporary protection and then come back and do a more well-engineered and designed shore structure subsequent at a later time. The state, with Governor DeWine, with the new administration, instituted the H2 Ohio program. This is a statewide program focused on water quality, improving water quality everywhere in the state, with a specific focus in Northwest Ohio and on Lake Erie. Primarily, it's designed to make a number of investments to improve state water quality, reduce nutrient loadings, specifically into Lake Erie, in order to help manage the harmful algal blooms. We also have a strong focus on public access. And by public access, we're talking about getting people down to the water and being able to get on and recreate on the water. So a lot of the investments that we make through our grant making programs, our Coastal Management Assistant Grant Program, are focused on enhancing public access. This is trails and ways for people to get down to the water easily. We also have other grant programs. The Coastal Management Assistant Grant Programs, by the way, are pass-through grant programs where we are actually passing through federal funds from NOAA to actually to be dispersed to our local municipalities to do the projects that they want to do. We have a Healthy Lake Erie Fund, which is designed to help us manage a dredge material along the coast. And this is a resiliency issue for commercial navigation and for our federal harbors. And then in 2019 and 2020, we received funds through the state, from the legislature through the state capital funds. And we implemented an emergency erosion assistant grant program. That program is done. It was a one-time shot, but what it did is allowed us to evaluate and actually put together a competitive program very quickly to provide financial resources to local municipalities to deal with areas that were really hard hit during the high water periods. And then we also do a lot of collaborative work, and some of our partners are listed here. Obviously, the H2 Ohio program, which is basically made up of three major state departments. It's the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and Ohio EPA. It's a cooperative program between the three departments. We work a lot with Ohio Sea Grant. The Old Woman Creek Near is also a NOAA-funded entity. It is actually part of the Office of Coastal Management. The Near stands for National Estuarine Research Reserve. It's a wetland research facility, but they also do a lot of stewardship work and also a lot of education work. Work with the Ohio Lake Erie Commission. I noticed that Joy Mullen next year as the director is on the call. Hi, Joy. And obviously, we work very closely with NOAA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as our partners. Sheldon Marsh is in the picture on the upper right. In terms of the images, just to the left on the bottom is the Pickle Creek Wildlife Area in Sandusky Bay. That was a 44-acre H2 Ohio major floodplain coastal wetland restoration project. And the image on the lower right is the Cedar Point Causeway project, which is an innovative nature-based project where we beneficially use dredge material to create a new coastal wetland. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of the types of products and services that we offer, and many of you are familiar with this who are from Ohio, we have our Lake Erie Shoreline Access and Tributary Access Guides. These are documents that we produce at federal expense. They are free and they're distributed along throughout the entire state, but mostly within the Ohio Lake Erie watershed. The Lake Erie Shoreline and Tributary Access Guides basically provide information to local people about where are the access points to the lake. 82% of our shoreline is privately held, so trying to get to the lake can be difficult. So knowing where these public access points is very important because you don't want to be caught trespassing. The Coastal Atlas is a very comprehensive compendium of information about Lake Erie. It's also in digital form, and I think a lot of the information, especially the digital information in that Coastal Atlas, may be very helpful as part of the coastal resiliency study, at least as we look at it in more detail along the Ohio coastline. And in terms of technical assistance, I talked a bit about that, but here's some examples of some of the erosion and coastal flooding that we experience. We also work very hard to manage our sand resources. That helps maintain our beaches. Obviously, coastal resiliency. And with our H2 Ohio program, a lot of the wetland work that we do is focused on habitat restoration, but even more importantly, a focus on improving water quality. Next slide, please. Okay, what are some of the challenges that we'll be dealing with, that we deal with here in Ohio, but also is related to the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, is that water levels are changing. Water levels occur over a different range of scales. We have long-term decadal scale changes in water levels. We have seasonal changes that occur, and then our short-term changes that occur primarily what we call SESH events on Lake Erie. And a lot of this is driven by climate variability and changing climate, water levels, storm frequency and magnitude, changes in air and water temperature, and more recently, winter ice cover. And I think this year, I think we only had a max of about 7% ice cover. And I think it was, for a while about 4%. And obviously the ice is gone now. And then we have a major focus on nutrient loading and water quality degradation, particularly in Northwest Ohio through the Maumee River system, a lot of agriculture, a lot of other activities going on, and this contributes nutrient and sediment loading to the lake that helps generate and cause the harmful algal blooms. And more specific issues that we deal with are on the right hand, on the center portion of the slide here: water level, storms and sesh events, coastal erosion and flooding, sand resources, habitat loss and degradation. We do deal with invasive species. Land use change and shoreline development is something that many of our coastal management assistant grants are used to help assist with. That ties into public access, because as you have more development along the coast, it really limits public access to the water. And then obviously harmful algal blooms. Next slide, please. Okay, this is my last slide. And this is sort of a transition slide to get us into the U.S. Army Corps presentation. So what are some of the benefits that we see? And this is just some thoughts that we have internally. And I would very much encourage you to ask us some questions about other different types of benefits that may come out of this study, and or you may suggest some benefits yourself for your local community and what your needs are. But going through at a broader scale and from a state of Ohio perspective, we're very interested in seeing an overall comprehensive vulnerability assessment and risk assessment of our entire 312-mile shoreline. We do not have the internal capacity to do that at the state level. And with the exception of just 2 or 3 larger communities, most of the smaller communities do not have the capacity to do this type of risk assessment. So we really want to take the advantage of the expertise of the Corps of Engineers and the federal government and the other states as partners to see what can we learn and how can we do this better here in Ohio. One of the outcomes of that will be we may be able to identify unforeseen risks and potential threats, things that we don't recognize now, but may become a threat or a risk in the future. The other thing that we want to do is understand better about what are some of the capacity limitations we have in both our own state programs, our own program, but also in the local community programs. And what I'm thinking specifically are the differences between more urbanized areas where there's a lot of resources and funding and expertise, and rural areas along the coast where we have very small communities or just townships, and there's no really any sort of formal governance structure which could actually help house this type of capacity. And obviously this study will increase coordination between federal, state, and local governments. For coastal communities, some of the benefits would be the potential to identify at-risk community services and coastal infrastructure. If we see changing water levels, if we have more frequent storms, what does that mean in the future for some of the critical infrastructure in communities? Will that be impacted? We may be able to help you make that type of an assessment. We may be able to offer certain types of planning assistance. And the Corps has a planning assistance program, but the state may be able to offer planning assistance as well in terms of how do we identify solutions to some of these potential threats or risks that we find as a result of the study. And I believe also the study will facilitate sharing information between coastal communities, but also between other coastal states and also state and federal and local governments. So I think that's really important. And finally, we really need your stakeholder input. That's in part what this meeting is about. There will be more stakeholder meetings, and we really want to have an interaction with you because we need to understand what are your needs and how might the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study and the work that we do here enhance and build capacity within your local community so you can respond to these potential threats and risks that may be identified out of this study. So that pretty much concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Akila or Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scudder. That was great remarks, great presentation. You do have some celebratory remarks in the chat, so please check those out when you get a chance. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage our Buffalo District Planning Chief, Josh Ungary, to make the Army Corps of Engineers opening remarks. So welcome, Josh.
Thanks, Akila. I'll keep this really quick and just use it as an opportunity to echo some of the really important things that Scudder said. The Army Corps of Engineers Buffalo District and the state of Ohio have a long and productive partnership, working together, focusing on Lake Erie, making significant investments in shoreline management and planning. And we've had some really great opportunities to plan and design many construction projects that protect critical public infrastructure, that have restored coastal wetlands, and that have also beneficially used dredge material. In addition, we've also coordinated coastal development and resiliency related to federal harbors. So what this study really represents is an opportunity to make an important next step to look towards the future for more opportunities for collaboration and coordination and partnership, and to also identify some of the threats related to coastal resiliency. So lastly, really thank everybody for your participation. Your time is really important to us, and we're really happy to have you here today. So thanks, handing it back over.
Thank you so much, Josh. We really appreciate that. Now I'll bring back to the stage our great project manager, Mike Padilla, to discuss the study background. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Josh and Akila. So I just want to tell you guys a little bit more about the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. As you know, the Corps of Engineers has a mission for water resources. And the 8 Great Lakes states, we have 3 districts, Chicago, Detroit, and Buffalo. They're kind of shown there in color code. We have these key missions listed here: navigation, flood risk management, aquatic ecosystem restoration, emergency response, and some folks may know us for our regulatory mission as well. The Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study was authorized by Congress in the Water Resources Development Act of both 2018 and 2020, most likely because of the recent high lake levels that occurred. And then before that was a period of low lake levels. The Congress directed the Corps to identify risk and vulnerabilities along the U.S. portion of the Great Lakes coast. They want us to make recommendations to them about strategies to reduce the risk and increase the resiliency of the Great Lakes coastal resources within the region. Again, you're talking about 5,200 miles of coastline for these 3 districts of the Corps. So that's how this all came about. Next slide, please. So a little bit on the study background. Again, the overall objective is to protect the long-term economic, environmental, and social value of the Great Lakes. And the most important part is through proactive planning. That's what we're trying to be here, is proactive about what could occur in the future given climate change that seems to be about us. This is a fairly long-term study and expensive. It's $14.4 million. Cost share 75-25 between the states and the feds. The estimated schedule is about 5 years. So from July of 2023, when we first started the study, to October of 2028. And you can see some of the photos here. We were, after quite a bit of negotiation, everybody was excited to be able to, kick the study off. Next slide, please. So the general scope of the study is, as we mentioned a couple of times, to do a vulnerability assessment. So what we're trying to do is identify coastal areas and coastal resources that are already or likely become vulnerable to flooding, erosion, and accretion. We want to identify resilient actions that address those vulnerabilities and improve resilience and adaptability of coastal resources. Finally, the study is all about coming up with a plan, a coastal resiliency plan, so that we can identify strategic recommendations so that can be used to prioritize future investments, to improve coastal resilience. Next slide, please. This is a collaborative approach. In addition to the 3 Corps of Engineers districts, we also have the 8 Great Lakes states shown with their Department of Natural Resources and other agencies there within those 8 Great Lakes states. We're also partnering and collaborating with the tribal nations. We've been engaged with them quite a bit over the past few months. We're engaged and collaborating with federal, state, and local agencies that will provide input to this study as well. And you all are part of this as well. We hope that we get as much input as possible from those that live, work, and recreate on the Great Lakes. And so it really is a collaborative approach, and we're trying to cast a wide net to get input from everybody here listed as part of the study. Next slide, please. So here's some of the questions that people ask, when it comes to, hey, what's going to happen with climate change? I know people experienced high lake levels a couple of years ago, and then low lake levels can cause problems as well. My favorite beach is underwater, when the high lake levels come. How will this affect tourism in my town? Some of the towns on the coast are very, big part of their economy is tourism. Fish habitat, fisheries is very important to the Great Lakes. Is habitat being lost? Flooding, everybody's concerned about flooding. During the high lake levels, there was a lot of problems with flooding. In the city of Chicago, where we're from, lots of issues with flooding during the high lake levels. And then with low lake levels, is my boat going to bottom out? Can I get my boat to where I need it to go? The shipping industry, if the lake levels are low, they sometimes have to light load where they can't use all of their cargo capacity because they can't get through with a heavy loaded. So that increases the shipping cost and is passed on to the consumer. And these and other types of questions are what people are concerned about when it comes to climate change affecting their communities. Next slide, please. So this study is actually what the Corps calls a Section 729 watershed study, which comes from the Water Resources Development Act that it was authorized in. And it's all about doing an assessment of the watershed. And in this case, the watershed are the Great Lakes. All the bodies of water, go to the Great Lakes. We're trying to develop and document a shared watershed vision. What is our vision for this watershed? And again, that's why we're here today to talk more about that. And then come up for recommendations for actions that can be taken to address identified problems and provide a strategic roadmap to implement those recommendations. So in this study, you can kind of follow the timeline here down at the bottom here. We've actually done a cost share agreement. We signed that back in August of 2022. From August of 2022 to when the study began in July of 2023, we developed a project management plan, and that project management plan, by the way, is available, and it is basically tells all about the scope of the study and the schedule for it, and with very detailed schedule and also budgets, very detailed budgets about what all the different things that we're going to do will cost. The first milestone for the study out of 3 is the shared vision milestone, and that again, we're talking about the shared vision today. More to come on that in a few minutes. We're moving towards that shared vision milestone. After that, we will continue to do our analysis of vulnerabilities and come up with recommendations, and we'll actually have a recommendations milestone that we will put together a draft report for people to review and provide input. And then the last milestone is the report milestone. We finished in October of 2028. We will have a final report as part of this study. Next slide, please. Here's a little bit about engagement. How are we going to keep the public involved in this, and also tribal nations and other federal agencies? Well, for one thing, you can see the public coordination is in blue, starting here with the shared vision today. The shared vision meeting that we're having today. But then, as we go along, we'll be having public meetings to do briefings for the study progress, so we can kind of tell you what we've been up to and as we go along, and that happens regularly along the 5 years here. We're going to have a meeting for the basin-wide analysis results, and we'll talk more about the basin-wide analysis here, but really what that means is we go out and identify all the resources that are on the Great Lakes coast, and then we apply to those what would happen on certain climate change scenarios, and that's the analysis that we'll do. So That will eventually result through our work in recommendations, the draft recommendations, and then again that final report. All through that time, we'll be engaged here with the public and with other stakeholders like the federal agency and state agencies and the tribal nations. At the bottom of the page on the left-hand side, you can see that code there. Again, just kind of plug in our website. If you were to click on that and go to the website, you can register and subscribe so that you will be kept updated. You'll be receiving all the communications going out to the public and to the stakeholders about the progress of our study. So I really recommend that you do that, and that way you can be kept apprised as we go through this 5-year study. Next slide, please. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Akila. She's going to talk a little bit about our shared vision statement that we're going to work on here. Akila?
All right. Thank you so much, Mike, for that wonderful overview of the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. I'd like to now welcome our revered planner at the Chicago District, Kara Patello, who will discuss the shared vision statement development. Welcome, Kara.
All right, thanks, Keela. Hi, everyone. So the purpose of this meeting today is the shared vision statement. And so we're going to get into getting some of your feedback on the statements that we've drafted and we're proposing. But like Mike mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, our goal of building resiliency throughout the Great Lakes is really a collective effort that requires a lot of commitment and dedication over the long term by a lot of people to make this happen. And so by having a shared vision statement that is kind of our guiding principle, it'll help us really stay on task and help ensure that everyone that's involved in the study and everyone that's involved in resiliency efforts throughout the Great Lakes is really aligned around this common purpose. And we're all kind of in agreement about why we're doing this and why it's important to us. So we're here today because we want to develop a shared vision statement that doesn't just apply to our study, but also kind of captures that ideal state for the Great Lakes over the long term from everyone who cares about the Great Lakes. So we don't just want to reflect our vision as the resiliency study team. We want to make sure it resonates with all of you and everyone who cares about the Great Lakes. So we're really excited to have you all at the meeting with us today, and really excited to get some feedback on the statements that our team has drafted. So just some background about how we got to these draft statements that we're going to be sharing in just a minute. So it all started back in the summer and the fall of this past year, where the resiliency team got together. So when I say the team, that's the Army Corps of Engineer teammates, as well as our 8 Great Lakes state cost sharing partners. And so we had some workshops where we all sat down and we brainstormed what makes the Great Lakes important to us, as well as what makes the Great Lakes important to those that live, work, and recreate along the coast. And then we extended this conversation to the tribal nations during the BIA's, the Bureau of Indian Affairs Midwest Region's Partner in Action Conference last fall. And so you can see some of that feedback that we got here on the screen, really great feedback. So you can see things from fresh water, fishing, we have beaches, tourism, swimming, habitats, ecosystems, biodiversity, all really important. And it was just really clear that the Great Lakes are really, as you can see here on the screen, an irreplaceable part of the identity for many people and many communities throughout our region. And so we started to look at the feedback, we compiled it, kind of did some analysis, and we started thinking and seeing these 4 themes emerge. So you can see here in the blue titles of each of the columns. So we have resources, recreational opportunities, natural environment, as well as the intrinsic and cultural value of the Great Lakes. So the resiliency study team took all this feedback, compiled it all, and we started to think about what makes a strong vision statement. And so we really want our vision statement to be memorable because it's going to be guiding us over the next 5 years. And again, we want it to kind of stick beyond just this study. So when we're thinking about catchy slogans, we want ours to kind of be like that, like a catchy slogan. So simple, memorable, and have a really clear interpretation. So these are the statements that our team came up with. But please keep in mind that these are just drafts, and we'll be sharing them at all 9 of our public meetings, but we also have shared them with our federal agency partners, and we'll be hosting meetings with tribal nations as well to share the statements and get feedback. And then our team will be taking all this feedback after the duration of this series of meetings. We'll take it all back and we'll use it to revise our final shared vision statement, which we'll then share on our study website. So we're really excited to get some feedback from you today during this meeting. And our first statement is that our vision for the Great Lakes coasts is to improve and protect their ecosystems, recreational opportunities, cultural significance, communities, and economies to be resilient for present and future generations. Our option number 2 is to support, strengthen, and protect their natural resources, recreational opportunities, communities, economies, and quality of life for current and future generations. And then the third statement that we came up with is to ensure a resilient and sustainable future for vibrant coastal communities, abundant natural and cultural resources, and thriving economic assets. So we really want this shared vision statement to be collective. So we're really looking to hear what thoughts you might have. And I'm going to pause here and give some time for you to read through them a couple times and really think about it. And if you have any thoughts, anything about one in particular that you really like more than the other, please share what it is about that one that you like more. And then if these statements don't capture your vision for a resilient Great Lakes coast, then we really want you to tell us why. And so you can put that feedback in the chat, or if you would prefer to share your feedback more anonymously, you can send a direct message to either Akila or Madeline, and they'll read it aloud to the group, or feel free to enter it as an anonymous kind of submission in the Q&A, and we'll, again, read it out loud to the group if you would prefer to share your feedback anonymously. And yep, I'll give you some time for you to kind of read through them a few times, think about it, and we'll just pause here to hear your feedback that you have. All right, I see some feedback coming through in the chat. In just a minute, we'll share an exercise where we'll kind of be ranking the 3 options. But if there's anything about these 3 that you want to share that you really like, you really feel like it resonates with you, again, I see some of that coming through in the chat, so really appreciate that. If there's something about one of them that you don't love, doesn't resonate with you, would love to hear that. Yep, I see some great feedback coming through.
Hi, Kara. I did receive one anonymously. I'd like to read it if that's okay. All right, so this individual thinks that these are more in line with mission statements as it tells what we/you intend to do. And they're saying a vision statement is more aspirational. For example, in 25 years or some period of time, the Great Lakes will be viewed as an international leader in freshwater resilience with vibrant ecosystems, excellent water quality, and an abundance other than biodiversity and extraordinary economic value. They're not saying this is the one that they're entering. However, they wanted that provide that as an example. If you need me to read it again, I can do that.
Yep, thanks for sharing. Maybe just read it one more time just so everyone can hear it again. But thanks for reading.
Yeah, no problem. So this individual thinks that these statements here are more in line with mission statements instead of vision statements. They believe vision statements are more aspirational. And they feel like, for example, 25 years or some period of time, the Great Lakes will be viewed as an international leader. So this is an example statement. So in 25 years, quote unquote, the Great Lakes will be viewed as an international leader in freshwater resilience with vibrant ecosystems, excellent water quality, and an abundance other than biodiversity and extraordinary economic value. I have some more direct messages. So thank you for that one. I have another individual says they like number 3, but think we could highlight these are resilient, sustainable, equitable future. Okay, no, sorry. I can highlight that we are ensured. Hold on. Okay, they can highlight that we are ensuring a resilient, sustainable, equitable future. Okay, I think those are the only 2 that I have directly to me. I will definitely share those with you, Kara and Jana. Thank you for all those who have provided input. Please keep it coming. You don't have to stop now.
Yeah, thanks so much for all this feedback. It'll really hopefully help us shape a shared vision statement that resonates with as many people as possible, as well as be the strongest shared vision statement we can for the study, because it'll be guiding us for the next 5 years. So really appreciate that feedback. And then if anything else comes to mind for the rest of the meetings, please feel free to either send it directly to Akila or Madeline or put it in the chat, and we will take that feedback with us to revise our final shared vision statement with our 8 Great Lakes state partners. So again, if anything else comes to mind, please feel free to put it in the chat. And so with that, I'm going to move to our next shared vision exercise, which is a website that our team has developed so that you can tell us which shared vision statement you like the best. And so I'm going to pause for everyone to navigate to this website that's listed at the bottom of the or at the bottom of this slide here. And I'll just read it out loud in case anyone's joining just by phone or is having a hard time reading it on the slide. So the website that you're going to go to is GLCRS for Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study .evs.anl.gov/shared vision. And when you navigate to that website, you're going to see a web page that looks similar to this image right here that has our 3 shared vision statements listed on it with a box next to each one. And so then in each one of those boxes, we're going to ask for you to enter 1 for your top choice, 2 for your second choice, and 3 for your third choice. And then click submit. And then we'll use this feedback from all of the shared vision meetings to kind of help us inform the selection of our final shared vision statement, which we'll revise again with all this great feedback that we're hearing today and the rest of the week and next week. But we do know it's kind of a lot to think about. So if you feel like you need more time to think about it and you want to come back to one of our future meetings. So like I said, we're hosting a series of 12 total meetings. That's with the 2 tribal nation meetings, the federal agency meeting, as well as our 9 public meetings. You are more than welcome and encouraged to come back to one of our remaining public meetings that we're hosting, which are here on this slide. And so as you can see, after today, we'll have 4 or 5 more opportunities for public shared visioning meetings. So we'll have one on tomorrow. We have 2 tomorrow, one in Michigan and one in Illinois. And then next week, we'll have our New York public meeting in Wisconsin, as well as an after hours meeting that will be held at the end of the day if it's hard for you to attend during the workday. So if you want to come back to share additional thoughts, please feel free to come back to one of these future meetings. And then if you have any neighbors or colleagues or friends that you think would be interested in contributing to the shared vision statement as well, please share this with them. Our full meeting schedule is available on the website. So I see Scudder has a hand raised. Do you have something to share?
Yeah, Kara, I have a question. I saw a thing come through. I think it's from Chris. How long will this poll be live for? I would like to send it to my colleagues, but with no rush for them to submit. I would offer that if they wanted to send things to us, to the coastal program, we could forward this on directly to the core, to the study team. Would that work for you? Just offering that as an option for people who want to cogitate about this a little bit more. Is that an option, or are we pretty much limited to the stakeholder meetings? So.
Yeah, so we're going to be collecting feedback at the public meetings. So as you can see here, the 5 on during those meetings, and then the poll will be live during the meeting time. So for that 2.5 hours that the meeting is scheduled, that's when that website will be live. But if you have additional feedback, questions, answers, of course, we encourage you to reach out to our state partners to share that and ask questions. You can reach out to the study email, but we'll be collecting the specific shared vision feedback during these public meetings. But again, anytime questions can go directly to the state of Ohio, our partners, our other state partners, as well as send any questions to our study email. So thanks for that clarification, Scudder. All right. Yeah, and I love that people are sharing it with their colleagues and friends and neighbors. So really, really appreciate all the great feedback that we heard today. And we hope you keep it coming. And really thank you for being here today and being a part of our shared vision.
All right. Thank you so much, Kara, for that great presentation and sharing that link, Madeline, in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for such great comments. We really appreciate you engaging with us. And so now I would like to bring our illustrious planner from the Chicago district, Jana Putoff, to discuss the major study tasks. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. The Corps of Engineers, we've recently completed 2 large-scale watershed studies. One of them is called the South Atlantic Coastal Study. Some of the graphics that we'll be sharing with you today are from that study to illustrate what type of products you'll anticipate seeing as deliverables in the study. So to understand and to get a grasp on how to make the coast resilient under climate change, we need to understand where are they vulnerable so that we can plan for those vulnerabilities. We have been very fortunate that the US EPA, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, has funded a climate change scenario modeling for the Great Lakes. And that is looking at different climate change scenarios, and we are working together as a multi-agency team. The Corps' Engineer Research and Development Center, NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, USGS, Woods Hole, the Corps' 3 Great Lake districts, Cornell University, and University of Michigan. When we were funded to complete this study, the question that EPA wanted the modeling team to answer was, what are the expected range of future Great Lakes water levels, wave heights, and ice conditions? And throughout the ongoing modeling effort, we've held stakeholder collaboration on a quarterly basis. So that this modeling here that's funded by GLRI framework, that is going to inform our study deliverable that is called the basin-wide analysis. So the basin-wide analysis, we will take some of those climate scenarios and complete a GIS analysis where we're overlaying high water levels and high water levels to understand where there's potential inundation over coastal resources, and then also to understand what the possible low water extents are under different climate scenarios. This GIS mapping tool, mapping exercise, this will be on a publicly accessible geospatial portal to share the results. And here's an example of the South Atlantic coastal study. The goal of the basin-wide analysis is to give this big picture overview because we're studying 5,000 miles of the Great Lakes coast. So this provides a screening level analysis of where there might be vulnerabilities under different climate scenarios. Using that information from this GIS basin-wide analysis, as well as our recollection of impacts under the recent low water incident, as well as high water along the Great Lakes, the Corps of Engineers and our Great Lakes sponsors, cost share sponsors, will identify focus areas. Focus areas that we all will conduct more detailed analysis. These focused areas, we will be conducting workshops, in-person workshops, where we'll be conducting more detailed analysis, risk and vulnerability assessments, and the goal is to identify near and long-term actions to improve resiliency. The state of Ohio will be hosting 2 workshops, and at those 2 workshops, we will have up to 10 coastal resources will be discussed and analyzed. So the next part is, so with that results of the focused evaluations, as well as our basin-wide analysis, that will inform the strategic recommendations of the study. The strategic recommendations are for the strategy that we'll use to basically look at those vulnerable areas in more detail. So the outcomes would be monitoring, study for action, monitor plus study for action. Who would be doing this? It's not only the Corps, it's not only the state, our state partners, but it's the Corps, other federal agencies, state municipalities, and this list of recommendations will form the strategic recommendations in the watershed study. Here's an example from the SAC study. And in aqua, you'll see different colors in the different colored here. The agency, different agencies are the ones that are responsible or have the authority to address that concern. And then also the actions are either long-term, near-term, and so there will be a variety of different types of recommendations included in this watershed study. And realizing that we're conducting only 140 site-specific vulnerability assessments, and there's 5,000 miles of shoreline. We also wanted to develop tools that local communities, states, other federal agencies can use to address possible climate vulnerabilities. And so Buffalo here on the left-hand side has completed this risk-based framework for resilient shoreline management. This document will be updated to incorporate this climate, looking at different climate scenarios and what types of adaptation and management need to occur. In addition to the document, we will have a web portal that walks through at a high level the general steps and thought processes that one needs to consider when examining a coastal resource and what actions might need to occur to improve its resilience. And that's it. Thanks much.
Thank you so much, Jonna, for that great overview of the study major tasks. And hopefully that answers some of your burning questions. And now I'll welcome back Kara to discuss the basin-wide analysis. Welcome, Kara.
All right, thank you. So before we kind of wrap up our presentation, we wanted to share some of the work that we've already started on the study deliverables. And so Today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the basin-wide analysis. Like Jonna just mentioned, it's one of our first major tasks in the study, and it's really foundational for the rest of the tasks that will kind of follow after that. And so the purpose of this analysis is that we are really trying to understand that big picture view of how changing lake levels due to climate change could possibly impact our coastal communities, coastal environments, and then coastal infrastructure. So really important infrastructure that's located along the coast that could be impacted by the hazards that we're going to be talking about. And this first step is really important for our watershed study because it's going to help us identify the areas around the Great Lakes that we, as a team, so as the federal government, our tribal nations, our state partners, as well as coastal communities might want to look at in more detail. So helping us kind of highlight the areas that are more exposed, where there's more resources that are exposed, and then selecting those areas if they warrant further analysis. So again, this is a really big picture view that we're talking about right now. And so since we're looking at that big picture across the entire Great Lakes Basin, for this part of the study, we're sticking to data sets that cover the whole study area. So in this really early part of the study, we're not going to be including any state or local data. We're really wanting to get that big picture view where we can compare apples to apples consistently across the board for the entire Great Lakes. So to do this, to kind of compile all the data that we're going to use in our analysis, the resiliency study team worked with engineers, planners, scientists, cultural resource experts at the three Army Corps districts that are working on the study, so Buffalo, Chicago, and Detroit. And they helped us identify coastal resources that we together thought was important to include in the study. And then we also worked really closely with our state partners on this because each state brings their own unique perspectives and insights, and then our state partners also do a really great job at representing what the folks living in their state really care about. So together as a team, we compiled data for over 100 different coastal resources that we thought were important to include in the study. And then we took those different data layers and we sorted them into three kind of broad buckets. So first, we have our social vulnerability and environmental burdens category. We have a category for environmental and historic resources, and then a third for population and infrastructure. And those will kind of build out our different indexes that we'll be using in our analysis. And we also have a fourth, which is the combined coastal resources. And that's a combination of all of these resources into one index so we can kind of look at them all together at once. And in a minute, I'll get into some more details about what's included in each of these buckets. But after we build out our indexes, we'll combine them with the hazards. And so for this study and this analysis, we'll be using high and low water levels under a range of climate change scenarios as our hazards. So we'll be applying those high and low water levels and kind of intersecting them with where these important resources are to help us select the areas where we need to study further. And so now I'll just share some details about the different resources that we're currently using in this analysis. We're currently thinking about using, just to give you an idea of the type of resources that we'll be looking at. So our first index that we're going to talk about is the Social Vulnerability and Environmental Burdens Index. And as we start to think about building resiliency along the coast, it's really important that we recognize that there are individuals and communities that are exposed to higher environmental burdens and might be socially vulnerable, and these groups might be disproportionately affected by hazards. So we really wanted to factor that into our analysis, and to do that, we're using a data source that's called the Environmental Justice Index, or the EJI. And this data source was developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. And so you can see here that the EJI includes they have kind of three different buckets inside their index. And so they have 36 indicators total for all of their different metrics that they use. And they kind of combine these to identify areas that are considered to be highly burdened. And so they have an index for environmental burdens, and that includes things like air pollution, water pollution. There's a social vulnerability index that looks at things like racial or ethnic minority status, socioeconomic status, and then they have health data as well. So data for pre-existing chronic disease burden. And so they kind of combine these all together to identify those areas that are considered to be highly burdened. And We'll be using that in our analysis. And then in addition to that, to respect tribal sovereignty and self-government and to fulfill federal trust and treaty responsibilities to tribal nations. The land within boundaries of federally recognized tribes will be designated as being socially vulnerable in our index as well. And so for that, we're going to be using the US Census Bureau's tribal census tracts data to identify those areas. So moving on to our next index, which is environmental and historic resources. These are really important areas as well that could be impacted by the high and low lake levels of the future. So we are looking at protected and managed areas. And so that is things like our national and state parks, our national lake shores, wildlife areas. We have our register of historic places, important bird areas, conservation areas, critical habitat for threatened and endangered species. So we have GIS data for that, and we'll be using that in our analysis. And then we're also looking at our coastal wetland or our coastal habitat types. So we have, data about where there are wetlands, where there's forests, where there's crops, beaches and dunes, fish spawning locations, and we'll be using that in our analysis. And then in addition to that, we have been pretty closely coordinating with the tribal nations over the past couple of months to help us kind of identify and include any available GIS data for those tribal resources. So we've been working with them to see, we did our, our own research to see what was out there, and then we have been coordinating with them to see if they have anything in addition to what we found that they thought was important to include and that they wanted to share with us. So we have been working with them to try and do the best job that we can to represent the significance of tribal resources. But we also want to recognize that the type of analysis that we're doing has some limits. It's a GIS analysis, and there might not be GIS data for all of these important resources. So we want to acknowledge that, but we have been coordinating with them to try and incorporate anything that they wish to share with us into our analysis. And then our kind of last group of resources, coastal resources that we're looking at is our population and infrastructure. So here we're going to look at critical infrastructure. And you can see here the Department of Homeland Security's critical infrastructure sectors. So think things like power plant, water treatment facilities, we have dams, roads, etc. So those will all be included in our critical infrastructure, but we're also going to include community resources. So schools, parks, other really important community economic assets that will be, if we have data for that, that'll be in our community resources. And then again, coordinating with the tribes on any resources that they have, making sure it's accurate and inclusive. And then population data will be factored in as well. So we're still pretty early on in the study as a whole, but also in this basin-wide analysis. We just wanted to share some of the work that we started and some of the progress, just to kind of give you an understanding of the types of resources that we'll be considering in this big deliverable from our study. And we are planning to have a public meeting in the fall to share some just overall study progress updates, but we'll also have more details about the basin-wide analysis to share at that point. And then our target is to have those results from that basin-wide analysis to share during the summer of 2025. So we really hope that you continue to stay involved, and we're excited to share more in the fall, as well as share those final results in the summer.
All right. Thank you so much, Kara, for that great overview. I hope that answers some of the questions that you may have had. And now we've come to the question and answers, or questions, comments, and answers session of the meeting. And I have quite a few questions that have already been presented to me. And so I'll go over those very quickly. Anyone from the state of Ohio, if you'd like to answer live, please do so now by clicking answer live, and I'll know to pitch that to you. And Madeline, I believe there were some questions in the chat that I'll pitch over to you shortly. All right, so let's go with the first question. So this is for Ohio. Does ODNR and or the state envision changing the language within Ohio Revised Code 6137 to include water quality standards and regulations as part of the maintenance of petitioned watercourses? I'll read it again for those that are on the phone. Does ODNR and or the state envision changing the language within Ohio Revised Code 6137 to include water quality standards and regulations as part of the maintenance of petitioned water courses. All right, Steve, I'll pitch that question to you and I welcome you to the stage.
Yes, and I put the that will answer live, but actually I think Scudder is much better equipped to answer that instead of me. So I'll hand it over to Scudder.
No problem,
Yeah,
Steve. All
thanks,
right, welcome,
Steve.
Scudder.
Yep. Yeah, this one's a hot potato, folks. This is what is known as the third rail of rural politics when you start dealing with petition ditch issues in Ohio. Yeah, Code 6137, that's Ohio EPA, it's water quality code. Certainly recognize that it would really be great if we could do this because, as a component of water quality is a component of resiliency, having clean, safe water. We don't have harmful algal blooms. That is an objective I think everybody could buy into. The only thing I would say is that there have been internal discussions along these lines, but politically, especially at the county level, because the petition ditches are generally managed by the county engineers, that's a heavy lift. That's challenging. But I do know that there is a project that we just reviewed and had a discussion in our H2 Ohio program where we are looking at implementing basically a two-stage ditch approach, but we're only doing it on one side of the ditch, if that makes sense. And it's the way there are going to be ongoing discussions with that county engineer to see if he would be willing to actually allow that to happen. So it's going to be a slow process. It is important, but at this point, I'm not aware of any formal effort to change the petition ditch language and or to put water quality regulations at this time. But I do agree it would be a significant benefit if it could happen.
Hey, folks, I did
audience
want to
would have a
mention.
better answer too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to gently remind people to try to stay on topic for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study,
Yeah.
even though that is a question about the lake and everything. It's slightly off topic and probably not the most appropriate venue for that question. So, anyways, let's move on to the other questions that we have.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that. And thanks, Scudder, for that response. So I'm going to the next one. This will probably be for you, Stace, for Army Corps. How will future public engagement meetings differ from this one? And then what can attendees expect from these meetings as the study progresses? All right, welcome, Jana.
Hi. So this meeting was targeting giving you all an update and an overview of the study, and then the shared vision process. As we go through the study, what we'll be sharing updates regarding the activities that we've been conducting, and then also sharing some of the deliverables that we're developing to get your input on them. And then near the end of the study, we'll be sharing the recommendations, and that will end up with the beginning of an 8-week public comment period.
Very nice. Thank you so much, John. I hope that answered your question. If you like more clarity on that, please do add another question if you want. And then, so the next question is, how can watershed conservation groups help contribute to this study aside from attending these public meetings? And I'll open that up to both groups, both teams to, well, both the state of Ohio and the Army Corps of Engineers to respond.
I'll be happy to start from the state of Ohio side. As I mentioned in my introductory remarks, feel free to contact us at any time. Very interested specifically for individual watershed conservation groups and or for local community representatives. If you want to have a conversation with some of our staff just together as a small group, more than happy to meet with you to discuss the study in a little bit more detail, but also to say, hey, what are your needs? What would you like to see out of the study? How do you see the results of the study being used by by either your community or by your watershed conservation group? I think if you could seek input from members of your conservation group, and if they have some additional ideas of things that we might want to consider or look at as part of this study. Again, it is a coastal study. but resiliency is a very broad topic. And so I think any input you would want to share with us, we will certainly bring it and raise it up to the project team and actually to our other state partners as well.
Very nice, Scudder. Thank you. Jana, sounds like you want to respond. You're on mute, though. Okay,
One
go ahead.
other thing that I think for those who are interested in, it's spreading the word, right? Spreading the word about the study, sending out whenever you send your blast emails out to your stakeholders that are a part of your groups, encouraging them to sign up for our subscription for the website, because that's the best way for us to get the word out and to notify people of upcoming meetings, study deliverables, and when we have new information posted on the website. So if you blast, send out and encourage people to sign up and subscribe to the website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana. Sarah, I see your hand, but I want to make one more statement. Madeline pasted in the chat that if you would like to see some of the questions that may have already been answered via text, please open the Q&A tab at the bottom, and you'll be able to see some of the questions and the answers. And I'll also invite both Ohio and USACE to respond to any of those live if you'd like to. But in the meantime, Sarah, please, you have your hand raised. Welcome.
Thank you. I just have a quick, in response to Jana's comment about the trying to provide outreach. If there might be one PowerPoint slide or a PDF that you could share, where what I'm thinking of, if I'm giving existing presentations and I can incorporate that slide into those presentations to share about the study with a QR code and a link, that would be very helpful. If it isn't already done, but if it might be made to be developed without a lot of effort, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yes, we'll work on putting something up on the website. Thanks for that recommendation.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I want to pitch it back to John or Kara. Did you all want to respond to any of the questions that you may have texted via live? It's up to you. No pressure.
I'll speak to one of the questions that we got about the basin-wide analysis. So it was asking where the data was coming from. And so for that basin-wide analysis, we're using all publicly available basin-wide data sets in the analysis. So it's a lot of national data, and we're downloading this from the authoritative data source. So what we mean by that is if we're looking at population data, we're going to be getting it from the US Census Bureau. We're looking at marine protected areas, that's going to come directly from NOAA. And so that's where we're getting the data sources that we're using in this analysis. And then as we move through the study, we'll incorporate other data sources as appropriate.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Kara. All right, so I see that I have some more questions. It sounds like this is more of a statement, so I'll read it aloud. Building resiliency along the coast. It says, please read the coastal engineering such as NOAA, amend the zoning code. Hard engineering is damaging, soft engineering is needed, but use the knowledge and research. I'll invite Joel to maybe expound on that if you want in another question and or place in a chat so that we can make sure we respond accordingly to that. I'll take a deep breath on that and go to the next question from Quentin. And Quentin is saying, sorry if this was clarified. However, when discussing the scope of the study, and they're meaning the basin study, what is the scope of the coast? And Quentin says they represent the riverfront community that is about 5 miles from Lake Erie. And they are wanting to know, can they expect their community to fall fully within the scope? And in the past, they've seen that any county bordering Lake Erie is considered coastal in its entirety.
So I'll ask Jana to kind of expand on my response, but for the basin-wide analysis, we're going to be using the extent of the modeling that you talked about earlier. So that GLRI framework modeling, that's going to give us the extent of the future possible high water levels as well as the extent of the low levels. And so that is what's going to determine our study area for the basin-wide analysis. And Jonna can speak more as to what that kind of extent of the modeling is.
It all depends on the results of the modeling. So if there's a lot of inundation, then the coast will see more inundation, more areas that have high water. And so at this point, because we don't have the completed modeling, we're unable to comment on this. The part where this goes, where we could pick up, the study would pick up, topics such as this, like more inland areas and properties, would be during those focused evaluations. And so during the focused evaluations, sites along the coast that are seeing vulnerabilities either because of low or high water, part of the analysis is looking at, what secondary impacts might occur. They're qualitative in nature. We're not doing modeling or additional modeling, but it would be qualitative in nature. So let's just give an example. If it was a water treatment plant and we're seeing low water, that it may impact the water treatment plants, drinking water plants' ability to take in water for a community. Well, the consequence of that would be, the service area that water treatment plant services. And so for the basin-wide analysis, it is definitely a direct impact, inundation or low water extent. And then in those focused evaluations, the workshop, the secondary impacts could be taken into account in a qualitative nature.
Thank you for that, Jonna. I wanted to go back to one question that we had from Chris and Mike. This is for you. So where can anyone find the USACE project management plan?
So yeah, we will post that on our website. I did want to caveat that, and that is that it was developed close to 9 months ago. It is required to be updated once a year. And so some of the data is going to start to get a little bit outdated. And why don't we update it more often than that? We're just so busy on moving the project forward that we just get to it about, annually to just update, because it's really all about, what is the scope of it, which is pretty well set. And then what is the schedule and the budget, and those are the updates that we'll make. So we'll put that on our website. It'll give you a really good idea what the study's all about and what the schedule is and what it will cost. But I just, again, want to caution that we'll probably only end up updating it about once a year, just because we've only got a limited budget and we're so busy on everything else. Yeah, it will be on the website. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike. We appreciate that response. Please continue to write questions in the Q&A tab of the Zoom platform. And I'm going to pitch it over to Madeline to let me know if there are any questions that you received in direct message or anything that I may have missed in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Akila. And thanks for clicking along with me on those links earlier. So the only question, I'm very intrigued by this one, is to Scudder. And the question is, if Scudder could be king of the world and could do one thing regardless of cost to stabilize our shorelines, what would it be?
Do I have to really answer that question? It's interesting. While that came in, Tammy Newcomb, Tammy, you're in trouble now. She was in her car. She is the Michigan program manager, or not the program manager, but the lead. She was driving her daughter home, and she heard that question, and she actually sent me a response, which I'm not going to use, but she mentioned her daughter said something that I sounded like President Biden, and I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not. So I'll leave it at that. But really, I think some of the answers that we've seen here answer the question for me. I see a much softer shoreline. If I had the opportunity, I would remove a lot of the hard armor stone protection that we have, that it's been constructed along our coast for the last 80 to 100 plus years. And I would institute shoreline protection or projects that would be more nature-based and it would actually maintain the natural coastal processes. I would like to see a natural functioning coastline where you have, abundant sand resources. The armoring basically shuts down the sediment supply to the coast, so the amount of sand that's available gets less and less. The wave energy is increased. We have lake bed downcutting. There's a lot of technical terms I'm throwing here, but these would be a lot of the things that would be addressed. Obviously, if we had a little bit less development right on the edge of the shoreline would be really good. So maybe I'd buy up a few properties and move people back off the coastline and let it be a more natural system. I think that really helps protect water quality. It certainly maintains and enhances the coastal habitats for the fishery, and it provides public access for most everyone. I think that for me is almost an ideal shoreline where we protect what we need to protect, but we do it in a way that is sustainable and in the most natural way possible. So that would be my answer.
Yeah,
if I was
thank
king,
you, Scudder.
but I'm not. Nobody's voting for me to be king. So.
Sorry, I had to ask it. It was too funny not to, but I think you hit on an important point related to our study scope, which is that the focused evaluations are really going to allow us to do a deep dive at specific locations and come up with some real tangible recommendations that are going to be site specific, right? And so that's a follow-on of the basin-wide analysis. And the intent is to be more specific and more located and specific to our recommendations at that area. I don't have any other direct messages right now, Akila, so I will pass it back to you.
Thanks, Madeline. Thanks, Scudder.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on Madeline, and that is,
Okay.
as we do these focused evaluations, I just want to ensure that the wherever those are identified, and that will be done jointly between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and our program, but we will be in consultation with our local communities, with our constituents as well. I want to make sure that your interests are represented in those focused valuations. In other words, that those are aligned to what your needs are, what you feel are the most significant and most components of resiliency that are applicable to your community. So just be prepared for additional continued engagement, not only by the federal project team, but also the state project team. And we may actually bring in some folks from some of the other partner states, maybe to see what they do. Maybe we can share some information with what other states are doing. So, the whole cooperative aspect of this study, I think, is going to be, right now, is underestimated, and I think we really need to enhance it as we move further down into the project and learn more about what each of the individual states are thinking and what they're doing. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Scudder. Joel, it sounds like you may have had your answer to the questions that you have, but we can give you a moment or two to come off mute to state your question, just to make sure if it wasn't clarified.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. Building resiliency along the coast certainly sounds like an invitation for hard engineering. And just as Scudder McKay pointed out, hard engineering is very damaging to the coast. One of the things that I would like to see you do is define the type of engineering. And I think if you go through enough literature that's already been put out there, you'll find get away from the hard engineering, go to soft engineering. It is so destructive. I've seen it time and time again. The revetments are destructive. The jetties are destructive. It all messes up the system. You want to bring the system back to a normal system, just as Scudder McKay said. And the costs of trying to defend with hard engineering or to defend against the lake, they're just too high. It's not a good use of public money. The better idea is to adjust your study and adjust the zoning and try to move people back from the lake over time. And there's nothing new about this. It's already in the material. And that's why some of your study you're going to do, it's kind of like, wait a minute, go off to the coastal engineering research. It's already there. So that's my point. The thing is, don't fight the lake with hard engineering, move it back, use soft engineering, think about adding sand into the system, because the biggest problem basically of why we have the erosion is the sand has been blocked up with these revetments, and there's not enough sand in the system. A simple solution, maybe it's expensive, but I think it's going to wind up being a lot cheaper than these hard engineering solutions that are really destructive. So thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for adding to the story. We really appreciate that. And I'm not seeing any more questions being asked of me. However, Jana, if you'd like to add to the story right now, please feel welcome to do so.
Yep. So, Mr. Khan, thank you for your comments. I wanted to just raise awareness that the Corps of Engineers is currently working on a natural and nature-based feature document for the Great Lakes, and we're hoping to utilize this as a part of our potential measures that people can use and consider when looking at their vulnerable shorelines. In our focused evaluations, what we'll be looking at are not necessarily selecting specific measures, but instead identifying whether a site needs a specific study and if that study needs to occur soon. And so it's to raise awareness of those areas that are vulnerable and need attention. And our goal is to basically include also, in our list of measures, it's not only the hardened ones or the ones that will be identified in this natural and nature-based features, but as a potential measure also would be those non-structural, such as changes in zoning. So we'll be, putting together a suite of potential options that coastal managers can consider when looking at their coastal vulnerabilities. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Jana. All right. I don't see any more questions. Madeline, let me know if you see any more direct message questions to you. Oh, here's one. Should we recycle inert glass in order to re-nourish sand supplies and beaches? I'll pitch it to whoever feels like they want to answer that question.
Well, I'm not sure I want to answer the question, but it would certainly make the beaches more colorful. Let's just put it that way. Ground up glass, it's pure silica. It behaves a lot like sand. I mean, it is a possibility, but it's not. We need a lot of sand along the 312-mile Ohio Lake Erie shoreline. I mean, it's a possibility. Maybe an augmentation, but I don't think that, I just don't know if the volume would be enough to make a difference. I know people sort of walk along the beach and they do pick up pieces of glass, the eroded beach glass, which is polished and burnished due to the action of the sand around it. And that's a very popular pastime for people who walk along the beaches that we do have. So.
And Scudder, I can add to that.
Yeah.
One of the questions related to using non-native materials for beach nourishment is the question of how you're impacting the native sand at that location and how you're impacting the resources of that area. So if you're typically, when you see projects where sand is being brought in for beach nourishment, it's sand that is similar in composition and grain size to the sand that's already existing on site. So bringing in sand that was, beach glass would be, I think from a regulatory standpoint, have to go through quite a bit of review.
That makes total sense. Thank you, Scudder and Debbie, for that response. All right. I'll pause for about 7 seconds to any last questions that people may have or any last comments. All right. Well, we thank you so much for all the great questions, all the great energy for engaging with us. And now I would like to welcome John Pacquiao to the stage to present to you the study's next steps. And once again, thank you so much. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Akila. So it sounds like from the Q&A, there's a lot of enthusiasm and willingness to stay involved in our study, which is very good to hear because when we were scoping out the study, we wanted to have a local community focus. It's why we reached out to the ODNR and equivalent agencies and other state partners to not just be sponsors, but partners into our study. And it's why we invited you all today to share your feedback on our shared vision. To maintain this local community focus, we included 5 regular study update progress briefings for the public in our study scope. There are 5 spread throughout the next 5 years of the study. We're currently in second quarter of calendar year 2024. This is the 4th of the 9 public shared vision meetings. 8 are hosted by each of our state partners, and there will be 1 after hours meeting hosted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Next year, we'll be presenting the basin-wide analysis results in 5 public meetings, 1 for each of the lakes. And in late summer 2027, we'll have public meetings for the draft recommendations, followed by an 8-week public review period. So this is a lot of future public study engagements to keep track of over a long period of time. So the best way to stay informed with our study is to subscribe to our mailing list, where we will send out periodic updates and notifications about future meetings and website updates for our subscribers. We will also have a website that will have more information about the study, including the schedule of the remaining shared vision meetings. And when we finalize the shared vision statement, we will post it on the website and alert subscribers on our mailing list. We will also alert subscribers when the results of the modeling is publicly available, and we look forward to seeing you all again in our future public engagement meetings.
Thank you so much, John. So I'd like to welcome back Mike Padilla, and as well as anyone from the state of Ohio to make any final remarks. And again, thank you so much for everyone for participating and engaging. And thank you to Argonne, thank you to USACE, thank you to the state of Ohio. Welcome.
Scudder, or Steve, any final comments?
Yeah, all I would say is that thank you to everyone who participated. Very, very much appreciated the questions. A few of them were a bit challenging, and I still don't know if I'll ever be king, but that's okay. That's fine. And again, just thank you for taking the time. I know we're all real busy, and this input is going to be invaluable to us. And don't hesitate to follow up with us at any time if you have any further questions or need additional updates on the study, and look forward to seeing you at our next stakeholder meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Scudder. And yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what Scudder said. Thank you very much for participating. We really are genuinely seeking your input to help us get the study right, and anything that you can do to contribute, we really appreciate. And be sure to subscribe, because then we can keep you updated as we go, and you can kind of be part of the team as we go forward. So once that's pretty much the end of our presentation for today. We will stick around for a minute or two to see if anybody has any last minute questions, but that's really the conclusion. And again, once again, we really appreciate your input. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll talk very soon, hopefully.